Alright, so my video got stopped by this fucking upgrade thing, so that was great. So yeah, I care about like how many dice I'm killing off, how many dice I'm like adding into my own. So like how would I say this? So like kind of think like let's look at drive-by shooting, alright? So I start with 5 dice. My opponent will often start with 4. And this is why I hate three dice decks so much. But we'll get down to that in a bit. So now I'm already 1 die ahead. The question here is how good is my die in comparison to theirs? So when we look at something like, let's say Vader's die, Vader 1, you're like, all right, well, I got 2 damage, 3 damage, and you're like, wow, that's amazing. Then you've got 2 disrupt. It could still be amazing. The threat from it is really good. Shield resource. So like 2 damage, 3 damage resource is an amazing die. And if you kind of think back, like, wait a second, this is also Sabine's die. That's why, like, Sabine is so scary, because Sabine could roll 6. Palpatine can roll 6, which is actually 10. And, like, 1 second. Getting 2 or 3 damage from a die is really good. But there's like things that you have to take into consideration. So like, all right, is it a modified side one? So like Finn's 2 damage ranged, +2 mod ranged, and then 3 indirect. And it's like, well, in the grand scheme of things, 3 indirect is amazing. Then you got 2 range and +2 range, so this is really good. The dilemma is that like his team comps are really questionable, and ranged upgrades are also super questionable. So like it's just not very good. So that's why he doesn't really see play. And he also still has that special that, pretty much heals one off of something and deals it to someone else. And it's another 2 damage side in theory. So like, why doesn't he see play? And it's primarily backed by the fact that that modified side is really fucking hard to use. It puts you in like bad positions. And red as a whole fucking sucks. Like, DH Blaster is really good, Pole Blaster is really good, and then it's like, wait, what the fuck? And like, DH has a pace side, so you have to be able to generate the resources to be able to cover that. So, because like the first time you do it, you're like, all right, well, I got DH, but then like, hero decks don't have a lot of 0 cost cards. So, seeing as they don't have a bunch of 2-drops that are very good to go there, without pace sides, like, realistically, they would have killed for an LL30. Instead, like Hidden Blaster is actually very good. But back to its modified sides again. So like we'll kind of see what ends up happening there. It just gets tough because they don't really have cheap things they get to realistically use. Like Lothcat and Hasty are cool, but Lothcat, your opponent gets to pick which die of yours you lose, and then Hasty, you have to have the battlefield. And my theory on stuff is if you play so slow, most opponents will like start to kill themselves into oblivion, but it also gets you a better feeling for what you need to do that round. As your opponent's hand dwindles down, your discard sides become more valuable. If their hand is gone, you now know that they can't cast removal. You played so slow that they spent their money thinking, all right, well, he's gonna have to hit something, or I'll find a resource in between. So it gives you like time to flip stuff over and smash damage in before they get to really do anything. But like Finn's die sides or Finn 2, sorry, not Finn 1, fuck that guy, are filthy amazing. It's just that red sucks. Red really does suck. It needs some better options going out. But him Cassian, we'll see how that ends up going. They're just gonna have to really like stick to viable sides, and like you may have to re-roll Finn's +2 instead of trying to pair that together when you only have like 2 or 3 dice, because even like 50% shots there are not amazing, and somehow try to avoid any of the damn modified sides, because like the other dilemma that comes up is their redeploy is not amazing. So like you get Holdout Blaster, you can run A180, I want to say, is the 2-drop one. But that's like 2 modified side, a pay side, and then a special for 2 shields. So it's just like, these things are not great. And as you, for a deck like that, that's more aggressive, they can't really afford pay sides. Like, if we think of the deck that is the most resource hungry, it's Sabine, and her upgrades have pay sides. Like, she completely loves Hidden Blaster because it doesn't have a pay side. None of their dice have pay sides, so that's great. But that's like, she has to play on Moisture Farm to get resources, and then when you hit those pay sides, you're like, crap, do I use this? Because now it's going to change my plans, and like, it just doesn't feel great. Because like, as you pull up more upgrades, you kill off your pay side dice, or you have to grab a resource with one of your other dice and then resolve the pay side, and it's like each die became 1 damage, and it just sucks. So it's one of those things that's hard to evaluate, because it's not just, oh, are my die sides good? It's, are my die sides good, and then is the accompanying cards for this good enough? We are 4 sets in, and red removal is still fucking shitty. Yellow hero used to also be shitty, and then they got easy picking, and it was like, oh shit. Blue hero removal also used to be shitty, because it was all like, my die has to be in the pool first. But now we're looking at hidden motive, mislead, and overconfidence, and like, realistically, none of those are super amazing, but when you add them with they're super consistent, like blowout cards like guard, force misdirection, deflex, like, it changes things immensely. So yeah, back to building up and the whole like die advantage thing that I was trying to explain, because I keep falling off track. So if you're, as long as your dice don't like just completely suck, additional dice are very good. And like, the reason I have to explain that is because if you're just like, let's say, so like Force Speed costs 0, and it's probably one of the best dice in the game, solely because it costs 0. If that costs 1, things change immensely. But for 0, having access to 3 sides that can let you action cheat, a focus, and a shield, and you really just can't complain. Like, a take cover gives you a shield right away, but the Force Speed, 2-3 rounds of use, it gave you more than you could ever expect. Because like, Tactical Mastery costs 1 to give you 2 actions, and this thing costs 0. Sure, it was a little luck based on whether they give you the action or not, or you have some dice out, but when you combine with focus sides or events that change dice, like, it changes things immensely, especially with the fact that like Ancient Lightsaber has a 3 on it. Stuff like that will change things a ton, and you kind of have to like gauge what's going on. But it's just the fact that like a 3 is filthy. But so back to dice advantage. So the reason I've always been about like, alright, I gotta go for the round 2 kill, is because if round 2, by the end of it, because I don't expect to just open the round and kill a guy, round 2, by the end of it, you've killed, oh shit, I shifted back into 1, oops, try to shift to 3, then failed. Round 2, you kill their guy, they're probably losing 2 dice. Most decks are going to be 4-die decks with 2 guys, so you kill their main guy, like 10 health, Ayla, whoever. Round 2, they've lost 2 dice, and now let's say they've played 2 upgrades, an upgrade on 1, upgrade on 2, they're back to 4 dice, whereas hopefully by that point, you'll have stayed relatively healthy. You had your 4, maybe you're up to 6 now, depending how things go. So if you're at 6 and they're at 4, now your removal is just much better, because it makes it harder to kill your guys, and that's where things like Caution and Force Illusion become like kind of huge. So what I would say is this, like, if anyone who played in the early set should remember Duggan. And Duggan reads this: you have to control the battlefield to play it. You pay 1, and then you can get 3 shields and divide them between your characters however you want. So now the thing is that we talked about 1 resource being worth about 2 damage, whether it like saved you 2 or dealt 2. So saving you 3 damage instead is just like, well, that's really good. Now, Sometimes you'll think, all right, well, shit, I really don't want to caution or whatever. But what you have to understand is that, let's say you had a die on a resource and you cautioned. So essentially you've changed it into, I've got the resource. I now paid 1 for caution to get 3 shields. And, like, that's really strong. If you think of it like he doesn't like you, it would be like, all right, well, I ate this die to eat 3 damage of my opponent's dice, because if your opponent resolves 3 dice that are on ones, then you've essentially traded 1 card in your hand and 1 die for 3 of their dice. If you only stop at 3 damage with it, that was off of a single die, it's like, okay, I stopped for 3. But there's an immense amount of value to be had from things like caution, because a lot of the time that's probably going to be a 2 and a 1 for the 3 damage that it's blocking. Like, at some point someone's going to resolve multiple 1s, so you can kind of just view it however you want. But stopping 3 damage for 0 and my character die is usually pretty good. Where you start to really question it is when you have like a 2 damage showing. No one ever wants to do that, but I think I would trade 1 damage pretty much every single time. If it's showing a resource, I really don't want to do that. But you gotta, as long as you can kind of remember that you would pay 1 to get 3 shields, then it's perfectly fine, I think, in my mind, to eat the resource side. So, like, just kind of value it like that. Like, it seems amazing when it eats a blank, but it kind of doesn't matter what it eats. Like, you will not want to eat ever 3 damage for it, and then 2 damage is where it becomes more questionable, because you could have dealt 2 or paid a card and prevented 3. So, like, the evening out there is a little more tough, just because your card essentially became like a pseudo take cover, which isn't necessarily bad per se, just not nearly as efficient. So if you had a better way to do it, like, that's fine. Things like caution will get really hard though with stuff like Cassian, just because his die is so good. It's no longer 1 damage half the time. It's resource plus a damage. 1 damage plus an indirect damage. If you do the 2 damage side, you almost feel stupid. Discard plus a damage. So, like, the added benefit you get from Cassian's die is just kind of ridiculous, and it's really hard to caution. And I've been running cautions in that deck, but it's super tough to kind of, like, bring yourself to do it. But that's kind of where, like, 3-wide decks really shine, because let's say in a 4-die 3-wide deck, you don't feel nearly as bad about caution, just because if they're going for one of the side characters, you have 3 dice to work with for caution. If they're going after your main character, you have 2 side dice for it, and side dice just aren't that great. So, like, let's look at Rex. I'm not even gonna think which 8-point die he would run with. But let's assume it's like Rex Clone Trooper, whoever. We'll call it Jedi Instructor, even though I hate that bitch. So, like, you don't really feel bad cautioning a Jedi Instructor die. If the Clone Trooper is showing either of the 2s, that doesn't feel great. So, you'll try to avoid it when possible. But then, like, one of Rex die showing the 1, or Rex die is pretty filthy. It'd be hard to use it on Rex deck. But just for example, there, like, it's just that you have so many worse die sides, you don't really mind doing caution, and you get, like, the extra ability to maneuver. Plus, if one guy dies, the caution's still not dead yet, because you have 2 guys, and whoever can just add to the other one. Whereas in the regular 2-guy decks, once one of your dudes is dead, like, caution's completely dead, you can't use it anymore, and it just feels bad. So 3-wide for me there is a huge thing. Also, access to flank, which I feel is one of the best movers in the game. And then garbage shoot, which is really strong right now. So if we end up going away from the special decks like Hondo Yoda with adjustment, then bringing back garbage shoots could be really, really good again. I don't really like stopping 3 damage with it, but it's not nearly as bad as it tends to be in my mind. Like, it turns into kind of like a more targeted negotiate, I guess is how I'd say it. As long as we're not having to activate a guy that had 2 dice, then just think of Garbage Chute like a not stealthier negotiate, but a more targeted one, since we can kind of just choose which damage dice we want to get rid of, and negotiate only ever got rid of 2 dice. So with that theory, it just became better. But yeah, so back to dice. So like killing guy round 2, since you'll more often than not stop like 2 of their dice while you're still building up, then hopefully you've maintained enough life to be good to go. And like especially with blue hero, because like realistically, I don't see myself leaving hero anytime soon, just because the removal is just so much better. The upgrades actually at this point are just so much better. Like originally, the villain upgrades just hands down straight up crushed hero. Hero just had like the shittiest upgrades known to man. Villain had like F11D and stuff like LO30s. What else did they have? I can't even remember what that was. C6, and like those were great. And now we're looking at, all right, well, we got a bunch of neutral stuff like ancients and shotos and heirlooms. But then, so if both sets of teams get access to stuff, it's like, all right, well, who has the better ability? Who's cheaper? Who's more cost efficient? And like hero is now more cost efficient with things like Ayla, Yoda, Cassian. Like they're just undercosted guys. Villain's been kind of getting shafted in the cheaper category. Like Towson came out and like that was great. Aphra was fine. Aphra didn't have that pay side on her other thing. Like she would have just been shit amazing though. Where like you have to build around her, and like at this point like you may start having to build around her, but their removal is just much more questionable in comparison. Easy pickings do good. Garbage Chute tends to be good, and then like you can just build around the other options, overconfidence and stuff. Like sure, you don't have Doubt if he doesn't like you, but Doubt is just more random to begin. There's a fucking state trooper just walking the line in the highway, man. I don't know what the hell this dude's doing. But yeah, so yeah, it's back to kind of like the whole like card advantage thing. So easy pickings will cost 1 in a die, or sorry, one in a card in hand, and not only do you get access to like the crazy damage blowouts, you get just like hit 2 of your resources, hit 2 whatever, and like if you just get their 2 character dice, even though they may not be showing the damage yet, the odds of them re-rolling to show the damage are going to be pretty good. Just eating the 2 dice in general is real strong. Just because they attempt to only have like 5, the 4 to start with, and then the 1 extra. So like the benefit there is just huge. Because like we really have to look into sometimes when you eat a die. So or like in that situation when you eat 2 dice, it's just that it's not. How would I say this? So let's say someone rolls out, 2 sets of characters. They whiff on all 4 dice. If I just flank one of their dice, it's not good because they're going to reroll, and then it would have been better to see what die hit, max damage and beat that one, so that it forces them into, let's say, another reroll. Because like let's say Sabine Ezra comes down, okay? So Ezra has hit a +2 in the base one. Sabine is whiffed on both of hers. This is after like a reroll. So at that point, you just flank Ezra's 2 because Sabine has a smaller odd of hitting her damage. Whereas just taking the 2 from Ezra is kind of pointless. Like, sure, maybe Sabine rerolls and finds a 3, and then it would be better for you to do that. But what if he just decides not to? The opponent decides just not to reroll the Sabine. So then, if that's like a shield and a resource, maybe they'll take the 3 of the resource and the shield, go into the next round, play another upgrade and go from there. It's kind of more dead again. So like, it's just like taking that 2 from Ezra tends to be just good enough, and you move on with your life. But if it was like 1-1 on Ezra, you're just leaving that shit there. wait for like a reroll on Sabine, take the 2 and 3 and be okay. Because like if you beat the 2 on Ezra, and Sabine rerolls in turn 2, it ends up being the same, so you're not concerned about it. But if she hits the 3, then it's like, oh, you know what it is. Like you would have to look at your health and stuff to realistically know whether you can afford to take that or not. But just gonna keep that stuff in mind. Because like, let's say he rerolls. Let's say you had like another piece of reroll. Hit up both Sabines. So if you left the 2 there and then hit up both Sabines and only 1, you want you to take a bunch of damage to the face. So you can hit the 2, so you can roll, then you hit 1, and you hit that one after. Whereas like just hitting it beforehand doesn't feel good. But if you're just easy picking both Sabine's dice, then you're just like, alright, well, let's just completely eliminate the possibility of you getting this, you know, the 2 or whatever's going on. They can roll resolve Ezra, and then it's like, alright, now we roll, now you hit 3 2, you can't easy picking, and then you take like 5. Or even they just hit 3 in a resource, which is like shit. So you can't easy pick them anymore. And like, that's come up a few times for me with easy pickings. But yeah, so back to the whole card advantage thing. So one of the big ways is winning through essential card advantage. Or just advantage in general. So like keeping, obviously if you just have more dice than your opponent and you've limited their dice and their options, you're going to end up winning like that. The other way is just being aggressive. So you blow through your options to pile damage in there to eventually do the same thing. So like in those situations you tend to be running a little less removal and your decks are trying to be fast. So kind of think of a Sabine deck that was less comp oriented, where it's like smuggling's truce and they're just trying to blow through the opponent. They get their guy like they kill your guy, then just drop a second chance and they move on. So like those are aggressive aggro decks, and aggro decks would be less concerned about kind of their hand and their resources. It's all about like getting the damage in and killing. So like Plo Koon, Padawan would be like one of those aggro decks, just because their plan there is to place like 3 upgrades, get their dice in the pool, you know, re-roll, and hit you really, really hard. So they're less concerned about, you know, completely staying alive. The expectation is well, I'll get all these dice out, I'll funnel in whatever damage, and then maybe next round I'll focus on like actual removal, because they can't do all the reduction resource thing again. So like Django Veers in the old days, Global Setup, they are just much more aggressive decks. The plan is to get an upgrade, roll my dice out, keep re-rolling to show like a bunch of damage, slow the opponent down with like doubts and motives. Other stuff however they can, and end up killing a guy, and hopefully you haven't dealt enough damage to them where they get to go and put a big chunk in before their second guy dies. And like those dice can hit kind of hard because you've got the focus side ability on the ID9 droid, you've got, you know, pretty much 3 sets of 2s on the Boba, and you've got you'll probably end up taking like 1, 2 resource off of 7, but not taking like Shield Disrupt unless you've already rerolled a few times. So like you should be able to come out with a healthy amount of damage in a round, in a given round. But the removal on that deck, because you're not expecting to kind of like ramp, is tends to be atrocious. Like it's amazing from a 0 cost perspective, but let's say people just weren't getting damage or everything's just been dying. Like all the dice have just been getting killed and damage is like pretty even, then the deck starts to fall off, because at the point they get to a point where they don't really have nut or butter upgrades, 3 cost things with like 2, 3, 2 and shit like that, and their removal, you know, just pretty much cost 0s, and then they got a couple, you know, maybe some overconfidences or electroshocks or something. Whereas other decks with like 2-drop removal end up, once you get to like round 3, they're just like, oh, Mind Trick you, Entangle, whatever, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, I can't get through this shit. So yeah, like that's more of an aggressive type deck. Aggressive deck is still looking essentially to get the whole like die advantage thing going, because if they kill your guy fast enough, they still have 5 dice. You've got 2, or sorry, maybe 3. Because like the thing is, if you attack the guy who got the upgrade and the upgrade's not redeployed, you've got them to kind of waste their resources. So round 2, you've killed their guy, it's killed their guy and taken their upgrade. So now you'll have 3 dice for them, because assuming your opponent is someone else, you'll 5 dice, or 6 dice, depending on what happens. And like the 3v6, or even just a round, tends to be too much for a deck to handle. What's going on over here? And like that's where things like the whole like drive-by deck comes to good play, because they threaten to steal your resources. If you're just eating resources, your opponent wouldn't really care. But when they lose a resource and you gain a resource, like you're getting like a doubled die side, which is like another Yoda special essentially. So when you're getting like resource and then flipping it out to max damage, it's really, really scary. But when you do stuff like that, an opponent with actual removal can tend to blow you out, because each of their pieces of removal was worth like a die and a half. So you flip to like the 2 damage on like a T-47, and now when they eat it with like flank or confidence or just whatever's going on, they kind of ate 2 of your dice. Like just think when you focus, like straight focus. One second. I've never seen so many cards with this card. So like when you have a straight focus, so like let's say Pluto focuses to like a +3 on the Ancient, and then the opponent, I'm just using flank for everything, flanks the Ancient. It feels really bad, because not only did you lose 3 damage, you actually lost a Plo Koon guy as well. So like Plo Koon's die, since the Ancient was probably showing 1 or something else, and then switched to 3, Plo Koon's die was trying to treat itself worth 2 when it adjusted the other die. So then because it got eaten, like it ended up becoming a 2-for-1, and the 2-for-1 there is really huge, because it's just like you can't recover easily from that. Like, and like it's kind of like the reason why I like Yoda so much, because Yoda doesn't have an actual damage side, but Yoda's specials and focuses can be treated like damage sides. What I mean by this is, so like let's say you have a T-47 out that whiffed and a rookie pilot die that whiffed. When you use a double focus from Yoda, you're essentially treating it, not treating it as the damage that it's making, but the benefit from it. So let's say let's say you had a shield on each rookie pilot T-47. Then, because you're going like, alright, well 1 damage and shield are about the same, when you flip it to 2 damage, you gain +1. And then the same thing happens for the other one. So you're essentially saying that Yoda's 2 focus was worth 2 damage, because it changed the values on 2 other dice to be +1 each. But when it does something like, alright, 2 focus flips an Ancient from a 1 to a 3, and then like a Padawan die from a 1 to a 2, then you're essentially saying you got 3 damage from it, because you gained +2 on the Ancient and +1 on the Padawan. And like that's where like some of the huge things come with Yoda, because you can pitch to reroll a bunch of your dice, and then okay, now I'll Yoda special, get a resource, flip some other die. And like that's why I hate Yoda chaining so much, because like it's fine in the situation where you're not going to reroll anymore, but Yoda cracking the special to get a resource, flip the other die, to get a resource to flip 1 die, is just like you lost half of the die. I'd rather just re-roll it, and then even if I hit like 2 focus at that point, it's like, alright, well, I could just use 2 focus on whatever 2 die changes I wanted, and then I can grab a resource and let's say a shield, and that shield's very relevant. Like that half of a die I would have lost otherwise would really be tough. So that's why I tend to just get like all the dice in the pool and try to like stay away from stuff, because that advantage there is huge. Like it's hard to really talk about advantage here, because the game states change just so freaking often, and like Most other games, it's not as simple as, or it's more simple as to be like, +1 or -1. And the pluses and minuses in this game are just crazy different. Because like we're looking at different health pools. Like in Magic the Gathering, when you take 10 damage, you don't lose half of your lands all of a sudden. Whereas in Destiny, you do. You have Cassian Ayla. As soon as one of those guys takes the 10-fold damage and dies, you've lost half of the resources you started the game with, or like of what you're doing. So your whole damage output gets lowered. Your any other like specific types of threats go away because all of the spot cards. So like it's clearly that in this game, killing the opponent's character is normally the best thing that you can do. So you kind of just have to focus on how to do that the most efficiently. So you have the decks that are just very aggressive, and the intent is not to ramp at all. It's to run off of low cost cards so that they can just tempo really hard. And then you have the decks that ramp up. And like mill decks are trash to me, just because they don't get any of the reduction, and they're having to play keep away the whole time. So it's never like, oh, how do I win the game? It's more like, how do I stay alive while slowly grinding? And it has to repeat that process through the entire game. And if something just magically goes bad all of a sudden, then this guy, he goes so slow, go faster. Then like they could just have lost the game, because like, all right, they got 2 rounds in, everything's going fine. Opponent has like 8 cards left in deck after drawing their 5. And now all of a sudden one of their dudes dies, so half of their spot cards are gone, half of or that's the guy who was going to discard the cards from their hand primarily, and now they have like whole new problems. So like, how do they go from there? Like then trying to get those last few cards gets really tough, and the opponent kind of gets like a weight off their mind because they finally killed the guy and removed the dice and blah blah blah. So like it's one of those tough things for mill, and that's why to me it's not really an option in this game. Not to mention you have the whole like negative thing going on with time procedures / tiebreakers that always kind of puts it behind. So someone plays a little slower than normal, and now you just like lose the game, and you get no choice in the matter because you didn't think to speed them up, back during the 5th action of round 1 or whatever. Because it's like, oh, there's plenty of time, and then things get really tight. Now you don't get choices in the matter. Plenty of time. So ramping to get out dice, or better dice, is also one of the other things. Hi, post office driver. Why you no wait? Cut me off, bitch. I shake my fist at you. Sorry, I'm blinking right now. Ramping's one of the other options. And now the thing is, with the decks that are ramping, or that have like a whole like ramp / resource engine, depending on how necessary it is for you, is kind of like how the deck operates. So like, let's look at the old Rainbow 5-die vehicle deck. And if we look at that, we're like, all right, well, Ayla's there just I've already parked, so don't harass me, bro. Alright, so like Ayla's there primarily for building up some of the damage over time, and like directing it towards the guy you'd like to kill. But you can also get the ramp, or she can get the little bit of resources, and she has the special, which can fix your other dice and mess with the opponent's dice. Rose is primarily there to generate resources but also has the 2 damage indirect. She has the discard and the disrupt side to potentially mess with the opponent a little bit. Ezra's a pile of shit to start. So Ezra has 1 damage resource, and then the disrupt and the special are there to harass the opponent. The +2 is only usable once they get like T47 down, or like Fang Fighter and get the 2 or the 3. And like all of your die sides become really incompatible, and your deck plays really slow. So when you hit like the rally aids and the tech teams is when the deck really starts to do stuff, because you only start with 2 resources around. You're trying to pretty much play 3 drops and like a piece of removal that costs 1. The deck doesn't have access to a ton of zeros, and it does have caution and hidden motive, but everything else is going to cost 1. Easy pickings, force illusions, flanks, pin downs, garbage shoots, all costing 1. So realistically, they need to generate about 4 resources around. They start with the 2. They'll need to get 1 to play like their vehicle, and then 1 more to cast a piece of removal. So without finding like a tech team or rally aid, you're looking to hit 2 resources off of your 5 dice or whatever's going on. The odds there are not amazing. So like that's why they have to run those cards, and when they don't find those cards, things can be tough. They have a very large amount of health, and trying to focus down a guy is really tough through cautions and whatnot. I was like checking time. All right, so we got some time. Oh yeah, it says it's a sick world, and I'm a happy guy. So the deck is kind of looking at as a whole, like what's the total amount of health my opponent has, and it just gets damage in, and eventually kind of just wins via like the total health damage being dealt, as opposed to the normal plan, which is like focus a specific guy down and kill it. Drive-by can play through kind of both variations, because they can focus a guy down and you'd be like, oh, let me go 11 that wedge. Or it'll be like, Y-Wings, resistance bombers, hitting whoever, and they can like spread out and put people into situations where they don't get to like really use the redeploys. So like it's those types of decks just try to hit harder and then hit whoever. Like think Palpatine when he plays, like sure he would like to kill a guy, but he's going to pretty much go 2 or 3 to some guy, and someone else is taking the other 2 damage. So he's going to kind of repeat that. Both guys are, in theory, they're multiple guys are going to die around the same time if he's going to win, unless he like combos and 6s some dude and kills them. But even then, like he's getting 4 damage to the other person, so they're already getting close to death. It would have to be like the No Mercy ones, where it's like No Mercy, pitch my hand, deal 7, kill that guy. This other person takes 2. So like like most decks are going to revolve around being the aggressive tempo deck, or some deck that has some sort of ramp engine. So like in the situation with like Drive-By, I have 3 character dice. I can't get a high amount of damage in. I can't show 8 off my characters. I can only show 5 max. But my resource ramp engine is already built into Yoda, so I don't have to have all of this crazy shit to build up money. Yoda himself hitting one of the specials could always chain, get me to 4, and be where I need it to be. Cast a 3-drop, cast a piece of removal, and then take what I get from my dice. But it also has the added benefit of just being able to focus my dice to show max, which most other decks need something else that costs resources to do that. So like that's why a lot of the 2-character Yoda decks are a little tough, because if you kill the other character, Yoda can't kill by himself. And if it's like upgrade based, then you have a problem there, or the damage goes really far back, whereas shit like Y-Wing, resistance bombers hit relatively hard. Even like a Fang Fighter showing a 3 is very good, similar to like a Sabine die. T47s do 2s. Like in that deck, it's a bunch of dice with 2s and more damage. Like Ezra has 1s, but Rogue Pilot doesn't, T47 doesn't, no Fang, no resistance, no Y-Wings. Like an R2-D2 has a 1 damage, So the thing there is that each of my dice are going to be worth 2 damage or something else. You normally like a resource or theft or resource, whatever. So like that's where that deck gets like huge benefits, just because each die is so chock full of value. So like the thing we're going to end up start seeing is like these new decks are going to have pretty much some crazy shit going on it. Built to Last is going to be filthy, because it's a built-in resource engine. Cast my Ezra Saber, cast my Luke's Rod, cast my Maz's Goggles, and generate a resource. So any of the 4 dice starts with Built to Last are essentially going to have been like a 5 dice start, where that 5th dice is always the resource. But it's also going to give you redeploys on your uniques. Villains kind of get fucking shafted immensely, because their uniques all fucking cost 3. But we'll see what ends up coming out with the set. If some 2-drop uniques for a villain come out, then there could be a villain Built to Last. But otherwise, it's realistically a pile of shit, because you start with 2, so you'd have to get 3 immediately, and then play an upgrade to get the other resource. But now if you spend it, going to the next round, you got to get another resource to then fucking do it again. Whereas with Hero, you're just like, oh, here's my 2-drop, got my resource, now I can cast a piece of removal. Or if that resource stayed through the next round, you could be like, all right, well, here's one of my 3-drops, I got my resource, cast my removal. It's just the fact that they have 2-drops, so you can jam it down as your first one, immediately get your removal, your resource to get your removal, and you've benefited from the ramp. Whereas your opponent can't really stop that shit on the first action, outside of like Boundless Ambition and shit like Diversion, which is just not good, because then if you get the resource back, sorry, not Boundless Ambition, Abandon All Hope. So like, I think these advantage type decks that aren't necessarily crazy tempo based can be really good this next set. I think we're gonna see 3 character decks come back to fruition, so we might see Bala make a big comeback, because they're gonna be Rex Clone Trooper decks. You're gonna have the Plu decks, and I think you're gonna have Built to Last decks. So we're gonna see how it's going. But for the most part, like the best 2 ways to win are an aggressive tempo variant, or a slightly slower, pretty much 3-guy deck that has some ramp action going, and like whatever efficiency from like dice and redeploys and whatnot. So like the 3 character decks are pretty much going to stick to redeploy upgrades and or vehicles, because aggro decks could just bust out a 7 health guy. So if they play an upgrade and then the 7 health guy dies and they lost the upgrade, like, it's going to be real bad times. But that's pretty much all I got for you guys today. We'll see if I do some more recording in the next few drives that I do, and try to elaborate on this. Thanks for watching. I know it's long. Deuces. Hyperloops out.